that up because I would have said something if no one else had said anything. Ladies and gentlemen, we went to the gym for 45 minutes, and this is the first time that Alex had ever lifted weights before, and now he is so under the weather, he was in bed all night. So he's not going to be able to get in. Bosco is still in 90 hallway with less than 10 seconds left. The wall that he opened, repelling on 90, also nets him his own death. So good night. Yep.
Gamivo, get a game.
It's really simple. All you need to do is go to gamivo.com. Then type the name of the game that you want to purchase. For example, I really want to pre-purchase Rainbow Six Quarantine, which comes out very shortly. So I type it in, I click on the game, and then I press buy now. I add it to my cart, and then I go to checkout now. Once I'm in the checkout now page, I want to make sure that I apply the discount code JessGOAT. Once you've applied that code, then make sure you go to checkout and follow all the following instructions. It's super simple, and you'll always get the cheapest price.
Alrighty, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to yet another episode of the Prep Phase. My name is JessGOAT, also known as Jessica Bolden. I don't care what you use, either way, I go by both. And of course, as per the very first episode, I always have my microphone set up for gaming and not for podcasting, but I'm pretty sure I got this one worked out right now. Let's see how that goes. But welcome everyone. I hope you're all very well. The first week of the prep phase went quite well. We did a super long episode. You can find that on my YouTube, youtube.com/JessGOAT. Or if you're listening to this later on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else that you're watching this, thank you very much for listening in. Now, this week we're going to focus on a shorter podcast. At the end of the podcast, I'll be announcing a super duper podcast for next Sunday, which will be the 17th of May. I have a very special guest. Have a video put together to introduce the guest that I will be having, and we will be having one of the most in-depth discussions, investigation, talk, pulling apart about coaching. So I'm not going to tell you who it is, but let's just say I couldn't have grabbed a better co-host for me for episode number 3. So do not miss out on that one. But we're here on episode number 2. And you're probably wondering, what are we going to be focusing on this week? Well, for this week, we're going to teeter on things like the 2-2 argument and the getting rid of ACOGs. We'll also be touching on whether or not Siege or Ubisoft as a whole should be focusing on making a system quite like CSGO, where there's prime matchmaking, or you've got to have a certain reputation, etc., etc. I'm going to discuss a few of those. If you're in chat right now, as I'm streaming this live on Twitch, you can also add your own discussion points. It's not a super strict podcast. We do just talk about whatever the discussion or wherever the discussion takes us, but I don't mind. It's all up to you guys. This podcast is for you, not for me. It's for all of you. We want to get down to the nitty gritty of the topics. We want to pull it apart left, right, and center. We want to look at it holistically. That's what the prep phase is about. It's about preparing you for every single topic in Pro League Rainbow Six. As per usual, thank you to everyone who subs, donates, everything throughout the podcast. Sorry if I miss out on you whilst I'm podcasting, but of course I've got the coffee in the hand, and all of those who aren't watching but are listening, get used to the whole coffee ASMR sound. That will continue throughout every episode unless I go through a horrific lack of coffee, which would be horrible. All right. I just finished a beautiful Mother's Day dinner and dessert with my grandmother who I live with. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty slick. I hope everyone else is well, keeping safe in this crazy world at the moment. What I want to start off with, and like I said, I want this to be a shorter podcast for the second episode because I want to possibly make it quite a big episode again next week. Like I said, I got a very special guest and we're discussing a topic that I have desperately wanted to discuss. And I'm gonna reveal it all at the end of this podcast. So I can imagine that the conversation might go on for a little bit. I'll try not to take too much of his time unless, he's willing and able, and I hope he is. So yeah, we'll see how we go. Move myself a little bit closer. My editor is changing the layout. He'll be making the camera bigger and broader, and then with my co-host, he'll be making the cameras like side by side and name on top, and I don't know. I'm not very good at creative stuff, so if you're visually watching this, the layout will change just a little bit. Try and make the camera a little bit bigger, blah, 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 blah. All right, let's start off with the first discussion. And what I want to do is I want to try and bring up the tweet which spurred on me wanting to talk about this. And I believe, so of course by Focus Dead Memes, or as he's known on Twitter as Dead Memes Focus. I think that's meant to be a sort of reversal of his name. He asked if we could speak about UB removing all ACOGs and made everyone 2-speed, 2 armor. He said the idea came from Kicks and I thought it was an interesting discussion topic, and that was one of my most top voted discussion topics for this week. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about. The reason I want to talk about it is because it's an extraordinarily interesting addition or subtraction, depending how you look at it, to our game, and there's multiple reasons why. And I want to, again, we need to pull apart these ideas holistically. We can't just be jumping on one side or the other of the fence. We're here to sit on the fence and look at both sides and identify the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. So if we start from Kix's point of view, his idea is to take all the complexity away from all the operators, some being fast, some being slow, some being having more armor because they're slower, and some having less because they're faster, and that trade-off. It's simply not being worth it, and just putting everyone to a 2-2. As Jaeger currently stands, if you've played the new Jaeger, who has been changed to a 2-2, which means 2 speed, 2 armor. So he moves at a 2 speed and has 2 armor. And that's the most middle balanced you can be as an operator. I think that's essentially what most of the flex operators are 2-2. So yeah, you'll find a lot of those operators in that sort of area. And Kix has said that we should change everyone to that, probably to make it quite uniform across the board. And by uniform, I mean having everyone on the same playing field, essentially. So rather than having an Ashe, of course, we've got to use Ashe as the example. I'm not even sure she's, a 3-speed. I'm pretty sure she's a 40-speed, but, each to their own. I guess I've got boomer eyes now. To instead of her being able to zoom into a room and sort of take you, not by surprise, but sort of engage in that gunfight or wide swing you at quite a fast rate, that she sort of comes in and engages you at the same speed any other operator could engage you in. Now, the reason I find, and we want to look at both sides, one, the advantage of having that is everyone is on a level playing field. You don't have to learn different speeds. You don't sound heavier than someone else, or you don't, I guess, particularly have to worry that someone's coming through the door quicker or slower or whatever it might be. So it becomes quite uniform, as we said. The bad side of that is that there's a reason why some operators are viable, full stop. Now, we had a very, very important comment in chat. Thank you for bringing it up. You've read my mind, by Fireball Trinity, who said, if Ashe becomes a 2-2, why would you even bother picking her if Zofia is available? Now, I already think Zofia is an extraordinarily extraordinarily important pick on a team. She has 2 concussions. She has 2 impacts. She has a great weapon. She doesn't move that slow. And she can pick herself up if she's DBNO'd, which is down but not out. So there's so much that this operator can already do that you also want to give her a level playing field as well, and quite possibly make Ash less viable because, well, at that point, if you're playing Ash for the 3 speed and then you want the ACOG and I don't know, now you could play Yana and get the same effect. I don't know, maybe Yana becomes more viable. It would change the ranking of certain operators. If we look at that on both sides, there is advantages and disadvantages to leveling the playing field from a speed and armor perspective. Unfortunately, some operators are only viable or are less viable because of their speed, mostly speed, not generally armor. There's not a lot of armor related arguments that you see in the game. Like, you don't see a lot of people going, well, you know, Rook or Gridlock, for example, God, I can never kill her because she's so strong with all that armor. It's just not an argument you see. Speed, however, is something that people are far more focused on, and it has been an issue, and therefore I understand where the arguments come from. I want to know what people in chat think about that. Obviously, Fireball saying, you know, some operators will just not be viable anymore when you can take alternative operators that haven't been picked purely because of their speed or purely because they're less viable as a roam clearer and an entry. We have a comment about things like Mira or Kavira maybe being more and or less viable. So there are operators that I do worry that if you level the playing field too much, then you take away some of the sneak or the purpose of some of the operators. Of course, Kavira, I would argue, when she goes into sneak step, that should automatically change her speed or something to that effect. So there are alternate changes you could make to operators where it is their utility. Someone else has suggested that, you know, we should put those kind of changes in an in-game event or something to test it out and go from there. Of course, and I mean, that's what the test server is for. We begged for a test server to try things out. Ubisoft has not been as aggressive with the test server as I feel they should be with it. I get it though, because there's only so many things you can add to a test server in one phase or one go before you're out of time for feedback, you know what I mean? So I do worry that we would have to put aside an entire test server phase or season just to try these kind of changes to get viable feedback, because you need to try these kind of things over multiple weeks. So I definitely agree that it's just one of those things that has a lot of advantages, but also has a lot of possible disadvantages, and you can't know if they're disadvantages unless you try it, unless you test it. So that's a really important factor, I think, going forward with this kind of suggestion that we should make everyone 2-2. There are a lot of other games where I'm going to call them characters. In our game, obviously, they're called operators, but where the characters or the AI or whatever are all one uniform speed between each other. There is no difference in speed, unless, of course, you have your secondary out, or, you know, you might have your knife out. Maybe that makes you walk faster or quieter or something. There are those kind of changes in certain other games, but not quite at the level that Siege sort of runs it. So I definitely think that there's that pretense that we need to be careful that all of the things that make Siege unique don't get flattened out to make them as similar as other games. I don't think we need to try and move towards the game like, or let's phrase it like this, because I obviously want to try and show each side, and whilst also sort of putting my opinion in between it all. So it's definitely important for us to make sure that we get the uniqueness that Siege started off being, and not sort of detract from that too much. I have never felt that the speed issue was a huge detriment. I've definitely noticed sometimes that someone comes zooming through. Like I would like to see 3 speeds, and I don't know and I wish I knew this, and this probably is something I could ask a developer or game designer or something, as to how fast in increments it is between a 2 speed and a 3 speed and a 1 speed, so on and so forth, and whether or not we can dial them all down by 0.25 or something to that effect, and maybe then 3 speeds won't feel as fast. Someone in chat just said, I think we already have enough ops. Unfortunately, or fortunately in my case, Ubisoft has a 100 operator plan. So they had this 5-year 100 operator plan. I don't think they'll reach it in 5 years, as they had originally planned, because they're obviously focusing on things like map reworks, game design, and all of those things, which I think is very, very important. But if they've got a 100 operator plan, then we're going to see so many more gadgets and utility pieces and all of those things. And I think that's great, because that's what makes this game insanely diverse. It's like League of Legends, how many champions or whatever do they have to pick from? Unbelievable. So I don't think we need to limit ourselves. I don't think that's the right direction. That would make the game stagnant even more than it is currently. The meta would just absolutely bottom out. We would feel monotony times 1,000, and people are already complaining that the game is monotonous because there's a lack of diversity in thinking, etc. So, absolutely, probably why they are to only add 1 op per season. I agree they don't always need to add 2, especially when you're focusing on full map reworks, game design and shift and all those kind of things. Get some coffee in whilst I can. So yeah, I guess if we boil it down and we get to the end of this 2-2 discussion, there are pros to it, absolutely. You become used to everyone moving at the same speed. There is no deviation, there is no advantage or disadvantage. Everyone is on an even playing field. Boom, that's what 2 speed, 2 armor would give us. On the other hand, the cons of doing that take away from the diversity and the advantages of some operators, of picking certain operators over other operators. And the example we used was between Ashe and Zofia. You know what I mean? Why take an Ashe anymore if they're all the same speed when you could just take a Zofia? When you could take an IQ, when there's multiple, or you could take a Yana instead, for the ACOGs. So, is there a necessity to take certain operators anymore who were fast, and that's what made them so attractive to take in the first place? I worry, and I've always been a huge advocate for us keeping this game as unique and diverse and as tactical as possible. And I think this is one of the little factors that has made Siege quite popular and quite unique. So it is hard to say whether or not Kix's idea of a 2-2 is right or wrong per se. He is both right and both wrong from a holistic overview. There's multiple ways to look at it. We kind of went over it in the past, 15 minutes or so. And I think I get to the end of that discussion and I think to myself, I don't think we need to do that. What I would like to see is maybe some testing on reducing speeds by a certain percentage, 3 speeds down a certain percentage. What is the increment that it jumps between 2-speed and 3-speed? You know, once we know that increment, can that increment be shortened? What does that change as an attacker or defender if we see those changes? You know, and then I also think on the other hand, Jaeger changed from a 3-speed to a 2-speed, and I kind of feel no difference. No real difference. I've found that I'm setting up, it's taking longer to set up by a few seconds. But other than that, I'm not really finding much, huge difference, not noticeable difference. So am I overreacting? Is 2-2 just going to be the same for 3 speeds anyway, or close to? So it's a really interesting topic, and I think it's one that we need to give a go in some way. I think there needs to be some kind of change. I'm just not sure what, and I think I don't have enough information at the moment to make an accurate assessment. Now, someone in chat said 3 speeds are 20% faster than 2, I think. So what if we made it 12? Or what if we made it 15? Do you know what I mean? What if we changed that increment and we tested it and people went, you know what? Yeah, when Ash comes wide swinging through a door, I don't struggle as much anymore. I'm not having to carpal tunnel my way to her head. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I also, and someone just wrote in chat which made me think of this, I also think gadget placement speed or reinforcement speed would need to be fastened if we change everyone to a 2-2. So if you change everyone to a 2-speed, then yes, okay, some people would be able to set up faster, but some people would set up slower. I've always said that reinforcements go just a touch too slow, just a touch. And when they sped up things like placing breaching charges and stuff like that, that was a huge quality of life change. Huge. I use a lot of breaching charges in my games, and I notice it exponentially. So I think there are changes in a lot of different speeds throughout the game that need to happen. I just don't think they need to be as wild as some people are speculating they should be. So yeah. There you go. That is the conversation on 2 speeds, 2 armor. Thank you so much for Focused Ed Memes for suggesting that topic. It was introduced to them via Kicks. And of course, I think it is a worthy topic for discussion, for debate. I just don't know whether or not we have enough information at the moment to really say whether or not there is a viable solution, when I think there are multiple solutions to this kind of very deep topic. I think this has a lot of ripple effects. You change everyone to 2-2 and you'll have quite a lot of ripple effects to deal with. So I'd like to see whether or not we could mitigate those sort of collateral damages that might come of that. Yeah. Now, the second topic, and let me get that up, was, I think this was also suggested by Kix, but I don't know for certain, whether or not Ubisoft removes all ACOGs. I'm going to sip my coffee for this conversation. All right. Someone in my chat by the name of OP Gamer just said, remove all ACOGs for a fair playing field. Oh God, I have had throughout my entire playing and coaching and analyst career and Siege over these past few years, I have had so many different opinions on the sites argument. It is so hard to keep up with what I actually currently believe. I want to discuss it holistically. You know, we always display all sides of a topic. I worry. And again, I think that this is the pretense for a lot of changes in the game, is that I always want to warn everyone, is that when you take things out of a game that made that an original or unique or important aspect of that game and you take them away because you think they're too overpowered or you think they're too whatever it is you might think about them, you lose a bit of uniqueness. You lose a bit of the originality that that game has. And if you continue to take and take and take and you never add or add or add, there's going to be all these holes in your, I'll use the analogy of a backyard. You dig holes and you want to take out that plant because it's ugly and this one because it produces, poisonous weeds, and then you plug out that tree and you dig that out and you dig this, and all of a sudden your backyard has all these holes in it, but you never fill them. And suddenly you don't have a backyard anymore. You've got a pit. My biggest argument for not taking things out, but quite possibly altering or changing or reformatting things, is because that analogy is the biggest, most scariest aspect of listening to the community all the time. Is a lot of them want to take, but never give. And that is a huge worry, because suddenly we will be left with no originality, no diversity, no, this is what makes Siege. And I have a big problem with that. I do have a big problem with that. We had the speed argument before. I don't find armor to be a huge argument in Siege. I don't think anyone's really argued it, other than when you got Rook armor, you can tank a Claymore these days or whatever. But you can take a grenade, I should say. So, we need to be careful how much we take and never give, or never give back. For every 5 takes that I've seen in Siege, there's been 1 give. That's a horrific ratio. We're starting to lose the essence of this game, and in fact, the only originality we're going to keep in the end is the new operators or the new gadgets that we add to the game. And suddenly that'll be the only new thing we ever get. So, I want us to remember where Siege started, and what the point of the game was. A tactical, objective-based shooter. That's what it was. And now people want to level it out to be this kind of near CSGO type game where there are more gunfights than there are, what are they calling it these days? Utility dump simulator? Like, some people have been using examples of how much utility you could bring. And I think to myself, yeah, but no one's ever going to put that on one side of the map. And if they did put all of their utility on one side of the map, just go to the other fucking side of the map, or the other side. Adapt to what you're seeing on your drone. You know what I mean? Like, I think people are blowing up the problem. Absolutely, some operators like Goyo and stuff, he didn't need 3 shields. Ying didn't need 4 Candelas. She probably doesn't fucking need smokes either. But she's got them. So, we need to be careful about the changes that we're making, because when you add up all these small or medium changes, it becomes a big change in the end. And suddenly we had Siege here, and then we don't have Siege anymore. We've got this warped version of Siege that is like 3,000 times removed. So, I definitely think moving towards a kill or a frag heavier type game is great from a competitive perspective, because, and not for all teams, mind you, but because of the entertainment value that adds. People want to see action. They want to see gunfights. They want to see who's the best quick, I'm going to call them quick leaner, but quick peeker, whatever you want to call it, boloer in the game. And when I watch the competitive game, okay, granted, I might be 1% of the entire population of Siege that watches the game to see how they use coordination to get rid of an ADS, to get rid of a shield. I don't know, maybe I'm the 1% that likes this utility dump simulator. Because I like to see how teams use their utility. I'm sick of seeing Ashes die with 3 flashes in their pocket. I'm sick of seeing Zofia die with 2 impacts in her pocket. Do you know what I mean? I'm sick of, you know, a team running an Ash and a Zofia and both Maestro cams still staying up. That's why I feel that we're having all these loud opinions in the community and they're not really getting to the crux of the problem. They're pointing out something that they don't like and making it out to be a problem more than it is. And that's not to say it's not a problem. Of course. But it's not a problem in the way that a lot of people are making it out to be. And I don't mind using hyperbolic statements or dramatic statements to get your point across. I don't mind using vicious analogies or anything like that, but it is egregious to think that you can make statements about the game and its current state and say that it's a utility dump simulator when half the teams don't even fucking use the utility. They don't even dump half the utility. So, yes. So, for all of those who've just joined, or for those people who are already listening on the podcast, thank you so much for, you know, dragging it out this long with me here today. We are talking about, our first topic was about whether or not Ubisoft should make every operator 2-speed, 2-armor. You guys can go back in the podcast, watch later, or watch on YouTube, or listen on Spotify, Apple, blah, 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 whatever all the other podcast sites are, SoundCloud as well, over the next few days once this is released. And now we're currently on the topic about whether or not we should remove ACOGs. We got a little bit off track there, but that's okay. That's what this podcast is about, is to discuss with the community issues that they would like to be brought up. What I think we need to be a little bit more aware of when it comes to ACOGs is that I have never, and I'm going to say this confidently, I have never watched a Pro League game where I've ever thought for even a second they won that because they had an ACOG. And I'm talking about a round. Or they only won that round because they had ACOGs. I've never thought that. I've never analysed a round and go, wow, they won that because they had an ACOG. I've analysed rounds where I've gone, that bandit with the holographic shouldn't have peaked an ACOG at that range. Yes, I've had those coaching moments where I've turned around and said, you've got a holographic, bro. You're trying to peek a guy 30 meters away who's got an ACOG on you. Think smarter. Wait till they get closer to you, because close range with an ACOG is very awkward. So make them play your game. Now, I've never felt that ACOGs were a problem other than spawn peeking or holding. And we will discuss this as a topic after this about bullet holes in soft surfaces. So I've never felt that someone having an ACOG has ever been a problem other than 1, spawn peeking, or 2, extraordinarily long angles through unseeable surfaces like bullet holes in a wall or a floor or whatever it might be. Punch hole even from very far away that doesn't render correctly. That I have a problem with. That needs to be fixed. But let me start this conversation again. I have a problem with spawn peeking with an ACOG, and I have a problem with soft surfaces, especially long angles, bullet holes, punch holes that don't render properly, etc. Now, is the issue here the ACOG? Or is the issue here other factors or sub-factors that can be altered so that the ACOG can't have that effect? That's the arguments that we need to be having. I understand there's always the main ingredient of an ACOG behind those two scenarios. But is the ACOG the real problem? Or is it that we can make bullet holes and we should be able to see through them at the way that we do? Or is it that people are spawning in a way that allows them to be seen from quite far away in a door or a window or whatever? Now, I've counter spawn peeked a lot of people, and I have been spawn peeked by a lot of people. And I actually find it to be a fun mechanic. Do I think it adds to the tactical integrity of the game? No. Is it fun to have the gunfight? Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah, it is. So, there's multiple ways to look at this. And someone in my chat just said, spawn peekers just do it because they can't get a real kill. And yes and no, whatever. You can argue what you want about spawn peeking. People still kind of do it in competitive. You actually have to wait a certain amount of seconds. In the rules, it says you need to wait a certain amount of seconds until someone's left spawn for you to be able to kill them, for it to be acceptable, etc. You can't spawn trap them, so on and so forth. So a lot of people are a little bit tentative in competitive leagues to spawn peek because they don't want to accidentally break the rule. But for the most part, you can get away with most spawn peeks in any tier of any gaming league, etc. inside Rainbow Six Siege. So yeah, and I agree. If you know the guy is spawn peeking, the spawn peeker is at a huge disadvantage. The pixel peeks you can take behind all of the different cars and debris and everything on the outside to reverse spawn peek someone is huge. It's generally how I deal with a lot of spawn peeks, especially on consulate, etc. So, there is a lot of argument about spawn peeking. Do I think it is the major issue with the ACOG? No. No. Not in most of the games that I've had. You know, you've got at least one teammate. If you've got a coordinated stack, you've got at least one teammate who keeps the drone outside. And 9 times out of 10, unless you've got a shitty headset or everyone's speaking, you know, at the end of prep phase or whatever, you're going to hear a window or a door or whatever break open. On most maps, I've been able to hear a window break. So it is, in my mind, not as big an issue at the top tiers as well. You got to think, you know, let's go from like champion downwards. And a lot of people are saying we should balance the game around competitive players. Okay, well, most competitive players can reverse spawn peek pretty effectively because they've got drones, you know, waiting outside to be picked up by their hot droners or whoever. So I don't feel like the ACOG argument is that relevant to a spawn peek one. We've spoken about both sides of the spawn peek. I think they're fun, but I also think they're counterintuitive. I also think they take away from tactical integrity, but they are also easily countered if you know what you're doing. So there's cons and pros. Now, then we go into other arguments of the ACOG. Should we take them all out and have everyone have a one-time sight? Recently, almost 100% moved to holographic. I play 4-3, quite a high FOV. So for me, ACOGs are just like zooming up on someone's friggin' left nipple. You know what I mean? Like that's how zoomed up it looks up on my screen with the aspect ratio and everything that I used. So it's too much for me to use an ACOG in most scenarios. So I've changed to holographic for the most part. So for me, I would be okay if Siege changed the game to one-time sights only because I would probably literally not really be affected. But Siege has always had 2 different sights to pick from, or 3 if you're going with iron sights, has always had these sights to pick from. And if there is an issue with someone having a zoom sight, I want to know what that issue is. What do you think in chat is the biggest issue? What in your mind is the biggest argument that the ACOG is a problem? Because I want to be able to analyze it effectively, but I don't know what people's argument for the ACOG is. Removing spawn peeking completely, what is the argument? So someone in chat just said, Everyone with a one-time scope will make the game much faster. But explain that. Explain why you believe that. Someone else said they're too strong on pixels. Okay, so peeking a pixel against an ACOG puts you at a disadvantage. What, how many times out of 10? I don't know. I don't know how big, how short range is the pixel. We're talking about a long pixel, yeah? A long pixel peak is what I'm assuming that you're suggesting. People won't hold angles much. So now we're getting into the discussion that I thought we would. See, I was waiting for this suggestion. If you don't have an ACOG and you can't hold long range angles, you're forced into short range engagements, no? And if you're forced into short range engagements, the game goes faster. And if you are forced into short range engagements, are you not then forced into closer up engagements and gunfights? This gets to my number one point that I've been harping on for months about, is that there are a lot of people who want this game to go more in the way of gun game than tactical objective game. This is why I sit more off the fence than on the fence about this argument. Someone else said shotgun meta would come back into play at that point. Absolutely. I already think shotguns are super. I play a lot of shotguns myself. A lot of smoke, a lot of mute. And that's probably mostly for, verticality and sight manipulation, soft wall manipulation, floor manipulations, etc. Now, I am worried that we've got down to the crux of why people don't want ACOGs, or some people, let's say some. And it comes down to people won't hold angles anymore. They'll just engage short range. Boom. Now, we can analyze that both ways. One, if they're forced to engage on a short range or shorter range, which I don't believe, because I already counter spawn pig with a holographic. Okay, I play 4-3. Not everyone plays 4-3, so their screen's not always going to be stretched up. But are we saying, one, that by enforcing short range engagements, people are more likely to get closer to sight and therefore focus more on the objective? Or are we saying that we are promoting very close range engagements, which means that players, rather than holding long angles or whatever it is they might be, we're just forcing them into gunfights at close range? I don't know what it is that we would suggest. I'm trying to come to a conclusion here myself. Someone in chat just said, the idea of the game becoming who is the better Ash main is unappealing to me. I don't want to play COD. And someone else made a comment to say, then it's not competitive as much, it's go for kill. Someone else said, would no ACOG force more people to roam? I also have these questions plus 20,000 more. I don't mind if we take out the ACOG. I actually don't. As I said before, I barely use ACOG. Barely. If at all anymore. I think I actually use it on Nomad. I don't know why I use it on Nomad out of all the operators. But I use it on Nomad. Pretty much solely on attack. I barely ever play the ACOG operators anymore myself. I find their weapons to be pretty pea shooter like. You're standing there pumping half a mag into someone as a doc, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, die. So yeah, I don't often play those ACOG operators anymore. But someone else said, and this is where we can talk on the other side of taking away the ACOG, is that the ACOG adds strategic value. And this is what I want to try and flesh out, is that there are ACOGs on both attack and defense. Of course, there's a ton more on attack than there are on defense, of course. And that's, for a very good reason. And that's never given the attackers any advantage or any overwhelming advantage on defenders, because the attackers have to go to the site. So by pure nature of the objective-based game, attackers, even with an ACOG, have to go near site anyway, and defenders can essentially stay on site and engage in a short-range engagement if they so choose to anyway. So to have a lot of ACOGs on attack has really never altered the game in a huge fashion anyway. And in fact, attacking sided maps almost don't exist anymore. It's mostly defender sided maps. As the meta changes, of course, things change statistically, etc. But historically, we've had an overwhelming amount of defensive sided maps. So then you take all the ACOGs off the attackers, and what do you have left? ACOG is attackers' biggest advantage over defenders. Not all run 4-3, nor is everyone skilled that much. Maybe take ACOGs from defense, or don't allow defenders to see outside. See, I'm a little bit of a lover of maps like Consulate, where you can like jump out, and you know how you have to counter them jumping out, with a claymore or a jump out watch or an air jab or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I love the excitement that comes with that. I think it means that teams need to have that plan in their head as to how they're going to stop someone from jumping out on them, or to bait an aggressive team to jump out and get the free kill. So it's a multifaceted argument here. One person suggested, should we take all the ACOGs off of defenders and only have it on attackers? Now we're getting into a discussion that I think warrants attention. Why? Because if we go with the argument that defenders, by pure fact of being a defender, already have a leg up on most maps, and we leave the attackers with the only ability to see at a longer range, then we're giving them the only advantage they have over a defender plus time, which is against attackers. So and thank you for that, Patrick. He said defenders shouldn't ever be in a long range fight. I kind of don't mind that. I kind of don't mind that sentiment that, well, you're a defender, your job is to protect the site, the objective, from anyone taking it. So therefore, at no point should you really be engaging in a long range fight. I mean, what's the longest line of sight inside the building you can get? And I'm trying to think, like, if I'm thinking bank, I'm thinking like top canto spot, which is the two walls next to elevator where the top of spiral comes up to, all the way down to ATM's double door. How many meters is that? And I can see that clear as fucking day with a holographic. Why do I need an ACOG for that? I don't. I simply do not need an ACOG for that. So, yeah, you're right. Do defenders need an option to engage in a long-range engagement when I can't think, and I'm literally going through every single map. I know every floor off by heart in my head of every map that's in the competitive pool. What's the longest angle? And you know, I got to take it to into my head soft breach as well. Consulate from Yellow Stairs? Yeah, okay. There is not a line of sight that I can think of on any competitive map that currently exists that would be so long that you couldn't see with a holographic. And for those who are just listening, I'm going quiet because I'm running through all the map in the floor plans in my head. Someone suggested, 90 softball to E-stairs. I could see that clear as day with an ACOG, with a holographic or a reflex, for example. Someone else said, do high-level players even care if you want to spawn peek? If you take Doc or Rook? No, I don't think they do. I don't think there is a pro player in the world that cares if you spawn peek. They're obviously going to be shitty if they die to the spawn peek. But they're going to think in their head, fuck, I didn't have the right intel then. I don't know a single team in the world that runs every 5 drone into the building. I don't know one. I don't know. I've never heard of any team. I've never watched a scrim where that's happened. I have never in my life. Someone said clubhouse pool to stock door. Yes. Yes, if you opened stock wall and you were all the way... if you opened strip, wall, and stock wall and you held it all the way from behind there onto stock, that would be the only reason you would need an ACOG on defense. And why does someone need to open strip wall and stock wall? Why? When's the last time you saw someone do that at a proper high competitive level? And we're talking about defenders with ACOGs here. I'm not talking about long lines of sight needed by attackers. We're just talking about purely taking the ACOG away from the defenders here. Someone then made a very good point, is that if you took the ACOG away from the defenders, an operator like Rook just simply wouldn't be picked anymore. It defuncts certain operators. Absolutely. And if you zoom back in my podcast, you remember me speaking about, the 2 armor, 2 speed, also, making certain operators void or barely picked anymore because their point was a certain aspect, like their speed or like their ACOG, etc. And if you take that away, they just become mute. They don't become useful anymore. So you need to, and this is what I said before about take. We can take his ACOG, but then we buff him in another way. How do we buff him? I don't know. I don't have the answer. But we can't take and never give. So if we go, yes, we all agree that defenders shouldn't have ACOGs because they should probably never be in long-range engagements. 9 times out of 10 long-range engagements are from fucking bullet holes or spawn peeking or jumping out from long range or whatever it might be. And it's just unnecessary. If we all come to that agreement and Ubisoft says, yep, no, we agree, let's take him out, then you must fix the hole you just made in Rook. You must fix the hole you just made in Doc, maybe. I would argue Doc still, gets picked a little bit, but nowhere near as little as Rook would be. So I do worry that the point of some operators, we spoke about Echo, with his ACOG, he tends to be a bit of a clutch operator oftentimes. So yeah, his ACOG being taken away would be awful. I think for a lot of people. It's hard to know. It's hard to know what the right answer is for the ACOG issue. I guess after talking about and discussing it for the past however long we've been discussing it, I've come to the conclusion that I don't think it's a problem on attack the same way it's a problem on defense. A lot of people have made the suggestion that you really, as a defender, never need to take that kind of super long-range engagement like maybe an attacker would. And therefore, why give defenders an ACOG? I'm leaning towards that being a pretty logical argument. I like that. I'm still sitting on the fence because, again, I don't want to make holes in already existing operators that might never get patched. There are some operators who I've probably not picked for months because they nerfed them and they never gave them any new foundation to work off of, so no one picked them anymore. I'm not saying everyone needs to be made viable, but there are some operators you don't pick ever. You know what I mean? So, yeah. let's also remember the people that want ACOG gone aren't Pro League players or high tier, in my opinion. I have no problem with ACOG because if you're smart, you can outgun an ACOG. I agree. I agree in multiple situations you can outgun an ACOG, especially in short range. Short range engagements with an ACOG are hard to take. That's why a lot of people run angled grip if they can, because you want to be able to ADS as quickly as possible because it's a slower ADS time. It's also harder to engage someone super short range with such a zoomed up scope. You lose a lot of that exterior vision very quickly, so it can be a disadvantage close range very quickly. So that's why you see a lot of people who are entry fragging, some of them take holographics because they know they're going to be up close and personal with roamers. So yeah. The trouble is the argument of removing ACOGs actually came from a lot of high tier thinkers in this game. So I don't know if Pengu said it. I think Kix has said it, and that's why it became a topic here tonight about the whole remove ACOG thing. And to think that Kix doesn't have a high tier level of thinking is ignorant. He has played this game at a high tier. He has followed this game at a high tier for years and years and years. So it would be ignorant to assume that his opinion didn't hold some value. And again, a lot of comments in chat about, a lot of people don't even use ACOGs a lot anymore. Most of them use holographics. So it's hard to know. It's hard to know. Also, someone made a comment in chat, please don't say Zeronic is a high tier thing, because that's definitely not true. There's a reason Ubisoft hires him over and over and over again, is because he's one of the best analysts in the world. Always has been. That's why he's worked more analyst desk events than anyone in the world. So let's just be critical of that. Is that, there are some people in the community who have done an excellent job for our scene, and they might not be always right. No one should be always right. But we should never downplay that individual's professional or their experience just because we don't like some of their opinions. All right. What do we think? I've tried to give you both sides of the ACOG argument or the debate or the discussion. What do we think? I've come down to, as I said before, thinking that I would agree that if Ubisoft was to remove ACOGs on defense, I would not be upset. I would be if they did that on attack. I think that's ridiculous. I do not think that that is what this game needs at the moment. So anyone who is suggesting that ACOGs be removed completely needs to provide a really, really good argument to tell me why. I think attackers are already disadvantaged before they even begin their round. So you take ACOGs off them as well, and I would like to know how they're going to patch a larger level of disadvantage before the round even begins. I have a lot more questions. I don't think we can answer this question here right now in this podcast. But yeah, I think the point you made that ACOG is not the same issue on defense as attack, that's the big point. Yeah. I'm still sitting on the fence. This ACOG issue, I'm going to stay sitting on the fence until I see some more investigation into it. I think we need to test something. I think if we take it off defenders, that you better damn have an answer as to what you're going to do to operators like Rook, who are going to be heavily affected by the loss of the ACOG, which made them the most viable. So, yeah, there will be ripple effects, and I hope we can fill those potholes that are made by, nerfing and taking, etc. All right, now on to our last topic of the night. God, you would think I would keep the same page up so I don't have to keep going to it. Actually, there was two different topics. One of them was someone wanted me to discuss current free agents in the scene and where they might end up, or other players who might change teams, etc. I haven't investigated like the current free agent pool in its entirety yet. I've just been watching as the teams kind of trickle into free agency and certain players trickle into free agency. So I haven't actually got a full list of names. So for me to analyze that, that might take a lot longer than we've got left in this current podcast, and possibly that's for another one. We kind of want to keep on the same kind of topics that we've been going on thus far today. Now, the reason I don't have a super plan for today's podcast, and please don't judge me, is because I've been doing so much research for next weekend's podcast. Now, next weekend's podcast, I am super excited for. I have my first guest. I wanted it to be a banger of a podcast. A lot of people know me to say quite controversial things, and I want next weekend for us to dig into a controversial coaching topic that I feel is completely underexplored, underexplained, underdiscussed, etc. I have the perfect guest ready to go. So that's what I'm excited about. But if you guys, actually, you know what? It's been about an hour. What I might do is let you guys ask any questions that you would like to discuss, debate, investigate very quickly for the last portion of this podcast. If there's any questions you have, just go ahead and ask them. Whether or not I know the answer, I can, bounce some ideas off the community as they currently sit here and ponder. We can do that as well. Otherwise, we might cap this off very soon and let you guys know who the next week's guest will be and what the next week topics will be as a result of that guest. Someone in chat just asked, how do you buff Warden? And I would, if you really want to buff Warden, take away the push to pop. Make him a one-time use. So if he gets flashed at all throughout the round, it just doesn't work on him. He's completely immune for that one time. So rather than having to push to deploy, the gadget is instilled as a passive ability. Boom, buffed. Just saying. Thoughts on the cheetah issue? You can jump on my YouTube, youtube.com/JessGOAT. I have a video up there called, oh God, I have the memory of a goldfish. Please excuse me. It's called The Current State of Siege. And I talk a bit about the cheating, hacking, and stuff like that on there. If you still have questions after that, next weekend's podcast, me and my guests, we might be able to answer them simultaneously for you. Would you like to see the full destruction in the event in other maps? That's a very good question. The destruction in the event, if you're not aware of what it is, it actually, they got rid of all the beams and just made the whole floor destructible. If you stood and aimed down and shot, boom, that whole floor would be destroyed in one shotgun shell, and you fall straight through it down to the next floor. I actually saw an insanely hilarious tweet. Actually, it was a conversation. Yeah, it was a conversation on Twitter between one of the developers and someone who said, "Oh, that same question? Can we use this kind of breachability on maps, and just certain parts of the room, maybe rather than the whole floor?" And the developer said, "So you mean hatches?" And I lost it because I thought, you know what? He's so fucking right. What the person was asking for is just big hatches. Completely breachable spot in the floor is called a hatch. No? So I laughed and I went, yeah, I'm never asking that question again, because that was embarrassing for that person, because what they just asked for was a hatch, which already exists. Yeah, so that's a funny one. Didn't Rainbow Six start like that? I can't remember because I joined at the end of year 1 and it wasn't like that at the end of year 1. What if they wanted spots that are non-reinforceable? Now you got me thinking. Beautiful interjection to my little giggle fest about the whole hatch scenario that back and forth on Twitter was, okay, can we make a spot that is completely breachable? You could drop down, the same you see on the event, but you can't reinforce it. You can't stop that from possibly happening. That would change a lot of things. Can't argue with that. Shout out to you, dude, because I can't argue with that. Do I think they should add it? Fuck yeah. Why? Because excuse my phrasing here, I'm a breach whore. If there is some vertical hole I can make to get an downward angle on someone, I'ma make it. I love the shotgun, love smoke, love mute, etc. So aren't soft floors and roofs like that? No, because they've got beams, so you can't drop through it. You can just make lines of sight. But if you had a section of the floor that was hatch-like in its destructibility, but you couldn't reinforce it, and it also had no beam, so you could drop down a hole if it was big enough for the operator to fit through. Yeah, that's brilliant. What if we had soft walls with metal bar-like floors? There's a wall in house, and I don't know what the room's called. That goes to show my map knowledge on house. There is a, right near kitchen, if you go where the double window is, there's that room on the side, and there's a wall there you can blow open. It's got metal beams in it. So if that's the one you're talking about, it exists, but it's not super common. They could maybe reduce prep so defenders can get to spawn peeking spots faster. Yes. No, not pool room. The one where on the other side, near the double window. The room which has 3 windows. Not the bathroom one, the one below bathroom. Yes, that one. It's got like a door and 2 windows, yeah. Do you think they should introduce the bulletproof glass in new maps? Very interesting. I like that. There is something awfully enjoyably voyeuristic about being able to see an enemy, but not engage. There is a weird feeling going, I can see you. My job is to kill you and your job is to kill me, but we can't do that. We're stuck in limbo looking at each other. Or I see you run past, but I can't do anything about it. That is a real... I like it. Why do I like it? It adds a whole other layer to Siege that has not existed before. It's called Office, thank you. Study. I think I've called it Study before. Yes. Someone has suggested the Chalet rework with that glass. Sure. I wouldn't mind seeing a test of the bulletproof glass in some kind of test on some kind of map. I don't care what map. I really don't care. Yeah. It's interesting. It is very interesting. Very interesting suggestion. I really want it to be put into the game. I just don't know. I don't know in what format or what way or how much. Just can't know at the moment. Yeah, like bulletproof glass on K9 and Chalet. I think that would be awful because K9's already a huge issue. That whole friggin' lobby fireplace area is a huge issue in Chalet already. So, yeah. All right. Thoughts on the test server and how it is used? I don't think it's used appropriately. I think Ubisoft is far too passive. I think they should be far more aggressive with how they use the test server. I say that, but I also don't know the administrative and the time restraints that they have with the test server. Like, oh, they have this much to test, and if they add more, it's too much for the test server population to be able to test at once, and this one might affect this one, which then affects this one, and then you get no real proper test results because this was affected by this. I worry about that. I worry about overloading in test server runs or phases or seasons. So yeah, as much as I would like them to be more aggressive, I also have to be careful that my opinion might not be valid or viable, really. So yeah. Yeah, someone was talking about deployment of gadgets, you know, being quite slow, Capcam, for example. Look, that's a problem with quite a few operators. They take quite a long time to set up. It's quite annoying, etc. But I kind of like that because if a lot of defenders could get ready on site quite quickly, then you'd see them running off site more often. And I want to see this game played more objective than I do frag heavy. So it's a 50-50. All right. You know what I think it is? You know what time I think it is? It's time to announce who my next guest will be. Now, you would think, given that I do this podcast every Sunday now, granted it's only episode 2, that I would have the video ready in my sources. I don't. So I need to add a media source, add a new source, look for my local file. I don't know where I saved it. Oh, here it is. Alrighty, I'm pretty sure I just deafened half of you. My sincerest apologies. That media source just loaded in at like 1000 volume. So, to all of you whose ears I ruined, my apologies. I have readjusted the volume for that. Okay, my beautiful editor decided, rather than us just doing, you know, a Twitter post or something like that, he wanted a damn video to introduce this man for next week's podcast. So, and shout out to all of those who had subbed and gifted some bits and everything. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Let us see who's going to be on the prep phase for episode number 3, and then I'm going to tell you the topics we're going to be going through, because that might be one of the most controversial days. And the reason I'm bringing this guy on is because, you know, we get along quite well, and I know for a fact he says it like it is as well. So this is why I got to get this man on. Let's see who we've got for next week. That's right. We've got the coach of the World Championship team, SSG, Lycan, also known as Justin, on the prep phase next weekend. Practically the best coach in the world at the moment, given he is a World Championship coach. Right? So that makes him one of the best coaches in the world at the moment. So, and mind you, I get along with Lycan quite well. Him and I have always aligned in a lot of our opinions on the game quite closely. We speak in private, every now and then about what's going on and how's his family and stuff like that. So I'm very excited to bring him onto the prep phase because there's a very important topic I want to discuss. It is a topic I have been vocal on before. I've publicly stated my opinions on this, so this should be no surprise that I want to bring this topic into the mix. And like I said, absolutely, I'm happy to discuss this. It is about not only professionalism in support staff, and you guys remember that video I posted way back on my YouTube about analysts and what a professional analyst mean, and we have to raise our standards and blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't want to just talk about raising standards in support staffing. I want to talk about, quite controversially, why there are children as coaches, why there are young adults as coaches, why there are untrained data analysts as analysts. I want to know, I want to break down with one of the most experienced and most qualified coaches in the world in Siege at current, why we have 18-year-old coaches, 17-year-old coaches, 16-year-old analysts, why we have them, what that does to the integrity of our competitive scene, and what he believes should be the future of support staffing in Rainbow Six Siege. We're going there. We're stepping the bar up. Why? Because there are topics that need to be discussed in this community that aren't. We skate around the issues and we don't tackle them head on. And that is a head on issue that we're going to bring up. And I'm not just going to bring it up. I'm going to give you all the evidence that exists in every other esport. And I'll bring in a little bit of traditional sporting as well to show you why having such young individuals as coaches can often lead to a lack of leadership. And this is why we are bringing Lycan on board, because he is extraordinarily experienced. He has a military background. He's lived quite a life. He has his own children. He's been, at least to me, explained to be one of the most calmest and direct leaders there are. So, that's where we're going. That's going to be a wild podcast. That one I can't wait for. So, if you don't want to miss out on it, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube. Or just follow me on Twitch and make sure you're here on Sunday. Or, I don't know, subscribe to the Prep Phase on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever. SSG's analyst is 17 though. Yes, and I will be asking Lycan directly whether or not he is data trained. Lycan is not afraid to talk about issues head on, even if they involve himself. That is one question I already have lined up on my Google Docs. Is you have an underage analyst, what has he studied in school that makes him able to produce analytics at a level that is required for Tier 1? That will be my question. Now, I don't pretend to know whether or not that person is trained or not, because I don't know. That's why I got to ask the question. So, we need to know whether or not there is going to be... There might be some backlash on that podcast next week. But we're going to investigate it. We're going to present the facts as best we can. I have all of my evidence laid out, ready to go. And I want to discuss both sides, like we did today, but next week on the 17th of May at approximately... Ooh. It is not going to be the same time as this, because I had to change it to North American time for him. So I'll have to double check. Give me 1 second as I boost into my messages to double check what time I've booked with him. Why do I have so many messages? There we go. 2 p.m. EST, which I believe, which is what, New York, wait, I want time zone converter. So 2 p.m. EST, which in Australian time, I want to change that to 2 p.m. please. To Melbourne time, which in Australia is about 4 a.m. So I'm going to do my normal stream first, and then we're going to, at 2 p.m. EST or 4 a.m. my time. Yes. So in 5 hours from now, that time next Sunday. We need to discuss Sternab getting roasted on Twitter. That is a topic for the week after, of which I'm kind of hoping you will be a guest, Sternab. I'm kind of hoping you want to be a guest. You don't have to be if it makes you uncomfortable, dude. All the power to you. But I want to get 2 guests on, actually, and have 3 of us talking about Twitter and the different personalities, myself included, the different uses for Twitter, business, etc. And yeah, just there's an episode I want to do about social media in its current usage. So absolutely. So if you want to get in on that, just DM me, bro. I'm still planning future episodes, so. But yes. Otherwise, next week, 2 p.m. EST, 4 a.m. Australian time, we will have the World Championship coach Lycan on to discuss coaching in very critical ways. Probably the most controversial coaching podcast that's ever existed in Siege thus far. We're going to go through it live for you. But for all of you who are listening here, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the support, all of the questions, all the engagement, new subs, bits, all of those things. Thank you so much. I am out of here for about 5 minutes before I load back up for some ranked for the rest of the night. But if you're listening on Spotify, you're watching on YouTube later on, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you follow, subscribe, all those beautiful things so you don't miss out. And your support means the absolute world. If you have a topic that you want to talk about or you want included in future episodes, make sure you throw it underneath my YouTube video. That way I can look back on it for future episodes and come up with some really, really good discussion topics. Appreciate you guys. Catch you in a moment. Ciao.